everybody? Welcome to Freeology Friday. I am Derrick Day, and he is.
I am Aaron Tomlinson. Still,
Yeah, you are, and it's good to see you. You're looking great, and
thank.
man, just glad to see things progressing and
Yep.
moving along the way they should be. And that's
Yep.
good because I told you last week, man. I'm planning on living to be 117. And so, with you being 10 years younger than me, that means you got to make it to 107 at
That works.
least.
That works
At
for me.
least, yeah, because I can't have my bestie checking out before I do, man. So
I was trying to check out, but I think they're getting me fixed up. So
yeah, I can dig it, man. I've had those moments too where something crept up in my body and said, "Oh, it's time for you to go," and then somebody catches it and they say, "Oh no, that's not time yet," and
yeah.
and I know you had something. Well, I'm not even going to mention that. I was gonna say something, but if you mention it, you mention it. I'm not gonna say anything about it. But tonight, now first of all, the typical what's in the glass. Now I told you I probably wouldn't drink, but I lied. I got a whiskey sour, but this is all that I have, and this is all I'm going to get. I'm not going to drink
So
anymore.
I am juicing, and not really. I looked at a juicer this week. I did. I was at a store up in Colorado Springs where they were selling them. It was like $600.
Ah,
So I
no.
was like, eh. So I bought this at the store. It's Organic Defense Up. It's orange, apple, mango, pineapple, and acerola.
Mm.
So I haven't tried it yet.
Well, you have to let me know how it tastes.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So if you were to put alcohol in it, what kind of alcohol would you put in it?
That's a good question. Probably vodka.
Vodka.
I'll probably put
Okay.
vodka in that. Yeah. I don't think rum would mix as well. Probably
Got it.
vodka.
Got
Yeah. So we'll pretend to put a little vodka.
it.
For people that
Yeah.
don't know, I'm being nursed back to health, and so the doctor's orders stay away from anything bad for you, including alcohol. So I'm following the doctor's orders
Yep.
for
So that
now.
means that means you can't smoke any weed or anything like that.
Yeah, I can't do any no
Right.
vices. So,
No
and
vices.
I'm going to follow the doctor's orders, but we'll see if they change. When I said we'll
Yeah.
see, it's like I'm not going to decide to screw the
No.
doctors.
So with that being said, we're going to talk about tonight's topic, and I'm going to go ahead and tee it up.
Okay.
Um, Today or the last couple of days, witchcraft has been on my mind.
Okay.
Has been on my mind because there is a whole group of people that seem to think that what happened in the debate this week was the result of witchcraft. And here's the thing about that, right? I do believe that witchcraft is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that it's a thing. I do believe that it has merit, that it has basis in reality, and that there are practitioners who practice it. And first of all, what I don't think, and this is a hill I'm willing to die on,
Mm-hmm.
is that I don't believe that everyone who identifies himself as a witch is inherently evil.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think that they're just like anything else. They're good. There's good and bad, except Republicans. They're no good and bad there. They're just all bad. But no, just kidding. Uh, but the whole thing about witchcraft, and when and I'm gonna pick on the Christians tonight a little bit, right? Although this is applicable to pretty much any religion, because anytime you start talking about witchcraft in Islam and Hinduism and any religion, it's always construed to be a bad thing.
Right.
But it's not inherently bad. But the thing about the Christians are they will look back in scripture and they'll say, "Suffer not a witch to live." That's what the Bible says. And there's a lot of precedent, biblical precedent, as to how to deal with a witch, and you get things like the witch at Endor and all of that, right? Which,
Yeah.
fun fact, right? In the TV sitcom Bewitched, what was Samantha's mother's name?
Endora.
Endora. Endora. Where do you think they got that from?
Yeah.
Endor. The witch at Endor. That was sort of a play on words, and you have to understand too that the writers, I think one of the writers of Bewitched was Sherwood Schwartz, was a Jewish guy, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So this guy probably had some really good, Torah instruction and all of that, and I think that there was like a whole lot of tongue in cheek there, a lot of digs at religion that were baked into that show. But Lance Wallanu,
Yeah.
Lance Wallanu came out and said that what happened on Tuesday night, Kamala's performance, was the result of witchcraft. That it was only witchcraft that could have caused her to be as successful as she was in the debate. Now, this is where I'm going to stop. I'm going to say this and I'm going to stop because I can really run on with this. It'd be the world's most amazing run-on sentence. But
Sure.
these Christians, now like I said, I'm picking on Christians tonight.
Mm-hmm.
These Christians, or let me say fundamentalist Christians. Let me nuance it just a little bit because I don't want to pick on all Christians, just the fundies, right? But when they say that witches can come in and upset something that is ordained by God, what you're saying is that you're all powerful, almighty, all knowing, all seeing God can somehow be frustrated by someone with an incantation.
Yeah.
Or let's take it a step even further.
Bless you.
That this God's plan can be frustrated by his adversary, whom he created, the devil. I'm going to use my air quotes a lot tonight, folks. Um, and I'm like, okay, I don't get this, guys. I don't, because if Trump is God's man and he's here to do God's work and he's supported by God's people and God is all powerful, should be able to do something about it. So there it is. That's my opening, Aaron.
Yeah. So I guess what comes to my mind is I was looking up while you were talking, I was looking up the Hebrew word for witch to see if there was anything there I could find, but it just means someone who whispers a spell or an incantation or practices magic. So, nothing too exciting there that I could find. But okay, so Christianity and politics, the Bible and politics have long been bedfellows.
Right.
And Christianity, from its very beginning, from its very inception, because of its exclusivity, practiced othering, has to other or demonize other people that don't toe the party line, agree with all the tenets of the faith, whatever. So, for example, if a person did a careful study of Mark's gospel, Matthew's gospel, to a lesser degree Luke, but you can see this based on the dating of the gospels. You can see this progression. There was an othering in those gospels primarily of the Romans. So it was the Romans who crucified Jesus. There's, it's subtle, but throughout the text, they're kind of othering the Romans as being the bad guys. And then you get to John's gospel, which is written later. It's written after the destruction, probably written after the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple. And so in John's gospel, the othering is clearly the Jews. Now, people may not like that. They may try to contend with that, but it's very clear that the blame for the crucifixion of Jesus in the synoptic gospels is with the Romans. Right. By the time you get to John's gospel, the blaming for the crucifixion of Jesus is laid at the Jews. Now, there's debate about who John meant when he said the Jews. But regardless, that's who he's blaming. And then you fast forward 100 years or whatever, and you really get into the writings of Justin Martyr and some of the early church fathers, but specifically Justin Martyr starts othering the polytheistic religions of Greece and Rome, stating that their gods are all demons, and making them out to be demons, making them out to be evil, making them out to be, part of the powers of darkness, the opposing force, whatever, that we have to stand up to or stand up against as Christians. And then, down through the ages, every time a people group got conquered by colonialists, starting with, the Celtic lands, right? The United Kingdom. Pretty soon, the gods of the Druids, the horned god of European folklore, with the goat face and the horns, which was venerated, which was worshipped as a positive entity. Pretty soon they take, so the MO is to take all of the religious articles or practices or gods of whatever people group that they're conquering and make them evil, make them dark, make them demonic somehow. We see the same thing you mentioned in the green room or before we were coming on about Santeria, and although Santeria developed a little bit later, but voodoo, developed quite a bit before Santeria. But again, most people's concept of voodoo is that it's all hexing and cursing and zombies and, what they call black magic. And yet, true practitioners, that's not what it's about at all. So it's this twisted, sort of distorted thing, right? And they're always using these sort of supernatural motifs. So here we are in a mostly secularized culture. I think it's safe to say. I think the West is secularized except for Abrahamic religions. So we don't really have, large groups of people that are worshiping pantheons of gods and goddesses today. So you have somebody like Lance Wallnau. I don't know. I mean, you sent me the thing that he put out there about, this election is being turned by occult and witchcraft and et cetera and so on. And I'm just like, what exactly is, even in his mind and his perception, what exactly is going on? I mean, the needle hasn't moved that much, man. I mean, it's going to be
that's scary, but
it is scary. But like, what are you even talking about when you're talking about witchcraft and occult? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, I would really like to know what movie is in his mind or what movie is in the mind of other people. I saw something on Facebook about, Kamala Harris was debating. It wasn't even Kamala Harris. It was somebody wearing a Kamala costume. And I thought, dear God, are there people actually out there that think we're living in a version of Scooby-Doo? We're just going to be peeling off the masks, and ultimately we're going to get to who? Hillary Clinton? Sitting there saying, "Oh, I wanted to be the first female president." I mean, but people believe this stuff apparently. And so I'm just wondering, like, when he's using the term witchcraft, saying, witchcraft is turning this thing, election, whatever, like, what do they really think is going on? Do they think, I used to wonder if Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady sacrificed chickens at halftime. Uh, the Super Bowl, especially when they beat the Falcons,
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I'm just saying that tongue in cheek for anybody out there. I didn't really believe that. But what do people really, people that buy into this and believe this, what do they really think is going on?
Well, it's funny. Like there are people that actually believe that Hollywood, for example, is run by witches and warlocks,
Yeah.
and that they're creating all this media to seduce the young people and turn them away from God. I mean that is actually a thing. And the reality is, let me just say this. I want to say this for all the witches out there, especially the good ones, witches of light. Let's call them that, right? Because I do believe that there are people who are tuned in to the spirit realm, that there are
Mm.
people who are tuned in to nature, and that they understand the power of words, right? I was thinking about this like with the Salem witch trials, that there was a woman who healed a child who was on the verge of death. And she basically created a poultice of herbs, placed it on the child, and the child got better. So this woman was actually guilty of practicing natural medicine. I mean, she wasn't even a witch in the sense of a witch. Like say, a witch is someone who understands the power of talismans and things like that, and how to tie words to these objects to create a nexus of power, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't believe that there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that there's anything inherently bad with that. But that's what religion says. Basically, anything that runs contrary to the standard religious narrative is considered to be witchcraft. And I'll give you an example. If you took your average M1A1 Fundy Baptist kind of person, like what's the name, Jeffress down here in Dallas, and
Yeah.
you shared some doctrine of grace preachers, which you and I both were before,
Right.
that this guy is going to look at what we've said in the past and he's going to say that these guys are witches. They're warlocks, right? Because that is what we were saying was contrary to the standard narrative. Or you take people like Simon Yap or Irvin Reed or Kyle Butler or Lynn Bennett and these guys or Jamel Broadnax and these guys are off the reservation. They're not preaching the standard M1 church narrative. And so as a result, they're castigated. And so anybody then who is at the business end of this castigation is by definition or by extension a witch or a warlock. And so what I want to get to, first of all, what is witchcraft? What is witch? I mean, let's not talk about what the biblical definition of witchcraft is. What is witchcraft specifically? And I want to refer to one of our viewers. Her name is Andrea Steger, and she goes by Andrea the Witch. And I believe that Andrea is a legitimate witch. Another one of our followers, friends, Beth Urban, that she is on the record as saying that she's a witch. Now, I think the difference between Andrea and Beth, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Beth is more into the Wicca practitioner, whereas Andrea's just incantations, right? And it doesn't really matter one way or the other. But the point that I'm getting is that neither of these people are using their understanding of the power at their disposal for evil purposes, to try to bring harm to anyone. And I think that this is one of these things where I think that and you're really good at unpacking this, like spirituality. If we can just get past what religion defines as spiritually proper, then maybe we can have some spiritual activity that actually benefits humanity in a very macro sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because right now you have people, you have someone who considers themselves to be a witch, and they're practicing incantations, or they're in Wicca, and they are able to draw something from nature, and so they're able to do something in a micro sense to help heal someone or restore someone's relationship or something like that. But when we get past the religious definition and we say, okay, it's okay for this to come out of the woodwork, it's okay for this to be shared on a more global scale, and now we can say, okay, we can apply this kind of power. We can. I keep thinking about, like, and forgive me if I'm rambling, but
No.
if you go back to the whole narrative about the Tower of Babel, right? What was it that God had said? He said, behold, they are of one mind and one speech, and they can do anything. So here you have people that are building the ziggurat because they're able to, because they're all on the same page, all on the same sheet of music, all on the same language, same everything, right? So they're able to do something that poses a threat to the Godhead. I'm using my air quotes again. Uh, so what happens if we take the religious blinders off this thing and say, okay, let's just say I brought along some uh, like sage. Let's say we have some sage going, right? And let's say we have some candles going, or uh, and we're able to do something collectively, like we're all on the same page, the same mind. You and I, we talk about consciousness a lot, right? That we tap into the same vein of consciousness and then make things happen on a macro level. And this is the thing that I think what scares religion. I think that what scares religion more than anything else is a unified humanity. And that if you take away the religious blinders and you say, okay, let's figure out something, let's tap into a spiritual vein that has a macro benefit to humanity, what happens then? You know, do we do things like eradicate poverty? Do we eradicate sickness? Do we eradicate hunger? Do we eradicate the misdistribution of wealth? Um, there's a whole bunch of things, and so that's what I want to get to this. First of all, what is witchcraft? What is it? What is it? And is it something that we should be afraid of? Is it something that poses some kind of innate threat to humanity, or is it something else? And that's where I'll kick it over to you, Aaron.
Yeah, I think, again, it's like anything else. Semantics can be difficult because, again, I've shared this 1,000 times. I feel like a broken record, but I'm drinking a glass of juice. There's general consensus on what that means. When you get to words like witchcraft, especially, I don't think there's a consensus as to the meaning of the word. So for a long time, it was a word that was used in a derogatory way, mostly by the church, mostly by Christians. Going back, you mentioned the Salem witch trials. There was all that shit going on in England with King James, and he wrote a bunch of books on demonology or something, and he was all paranoid about that stuff too. So the term itself, I think, originated. I think if you go look at the etymology of it, I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected here. But I think the term itself kind of originated in the English language as a pejorative for people who are practicing what we would call baneful magic, the kind of magic that's meant to bring harm, putting a curse on someone, putting a death curse on someone, putting a poverty curse on someone, whatever. And then you've got Wicca, which is a whole different thing. So Wicca came about, I want to say, in the mid 20th century. The guy named Gerald Gardner, who was actually a former member of the um, Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society that Aleister Crowley was part of that. Bram Stoker was part of that. I'm trying to think of other prominent people. Those are the only two that pop
Yeah, I
into my
think
head.
Mary Shelley was a member of that too.
Yeah. And so after he broke off from the Golden Dawn, he sort of so Golden Dawn was really high ritual magic that was really couched in Christian symbolism and terms, and took that and made more of a nature religion out of it, with combining some of the rituals from the Golden Dawn and stuff like that. And I have a friend who's an initiated Gardnerian. In other words, she comes from the Gardner original initiation of Wicca. And of course, one of their tenets is to do no harm. And I think they even have a belief that, if you do harmful magic, it comes back on you threefold. And so Wicca and witchcraft aren't necessarily the same thing. So when you're defining what is it, I think we've done a pretty good job tonight. I think it's people who are using energy, magic, concentrating energy into talismans and objects and places and things like that. But I think most people who are practicing it today are practicing it from the standpoint of trying to do good in the world and not trying to bring harm to people. But again, it goes back to this whole thing where it becomes a threat. I think you're absolutely right. I definitely believe in energy. I definitely believe in magic. I think that if we wake up to our own power and the power that's latent within the universe and learn how to control that, which is maybe a definition for witchcraft or magic that would be good, then collectively that's going to do humanity a lot of good. But that's going to overthrow the power structures. And that's what this is all about. This is all about power structures. This is all about maintaining power structures. Listen, I met Lance Wallnau in the late 90s and followed his ministry for a time. We had some mutual friends. And I'm just going to say this. The guy was a complete failure as a pastor in New York. He was a complete failure, burnt out, and kind of a nobody until he got invited to, and he was supporting Ted Cruz in 2016 until he got invited to Trump Towers. And then he's up there with Trump Towers with Ken Copeland. And I don't know, I suppose the guy in Dallas that you mentioned, I forgot his name already.
Yeah, Jeffers.
And so now he's all of a sudden been elevated to the who's who. And he makes a statement that he shook Trump's hand and he felt the anointing. And he's the idiot that came up with Isaiah 45 prophecy. I mean, come on, man. Like, it's so frustrating for me, Derrick, because we're talking about witchcraft, people that can really tap into power that's latent within the universe, power that's latent within themselves, and deliver the goods. And then you got these guys that, I don't know, he's the 45th president. Let's Psalm 45. That didn't seem to fit. Let's Ezekiel 45. That didn't work. Oh, Isaiah 45. Here, this works. And because it's 45 and 45, oh, God spoke to me. I mean, really? Are we really that infantile? Because to me, that's just the infantilization of humanity, like shrinking people's spirits with that kind of stupidity. And I don't know how to be nice about it. I don't want to offend people. But if you're following that guy, so then all of a sudden he found a place for himself when it was Isaiah 45 prophecy. So now in order to maintain, I believe, 100% believe this. I don't know the man's heart. I could be totally wrong. But from all appearances, he's trying to maintain his own power and influence by his ties to a Trump administration. And so at the end of the day, this just comes back to power brokers and power dynamics and jockeying for power. And if we could just be honest about it and say that's what's really going on, instead of putting all this religious smoke and mirrors up for people, but then I guess they don't follow it. But I mean, I was looking at the thing you sent me that he posted, like, who's using deception? I mean, we clearly know that Trump lies every time he opens his mouth. I mean, that's pretty much evident to anybody who's an honest, objective thinker in this thing. It's pretty obvious. So I don't know. It's weird, man. It's a weird time to be alive.
Well, you know what? Let me say this about something you said. You say you can't judge him. You absolutely can, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'm going to use his own book of incantations
Yeah.
to do this. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
So whatever he said, he's confessing to you what he actually believes. So that's number one. number two, that when it comes to conservatives, every accusation is a confession. So if you're saying that this is witchcraft, what you're actually saying is that you're in your mind, you're practicing witchcraft, but you're trying to keep it on the down low, right? So what happens is when they start cursing and accusing, that's a form of witchcraft. It's funny that Satan as a being does not exist according to Scripture. Satan, again, according to the Bible, does not exist. What does exist is the accuser, the Hashatan. That is, so anything that you see where there is Satan involved, there is an accuser. There is an accuser. And typically when you look at accusations in humanity, that accusations are almost always confessions.
Mm-hmm.
People, they accuse. It's so funny that conservatives accuse Democrats and liberals of being child molesters and human traffickers. And every time a pedophile is exposed, or a child trafficker or human trafficker is exposed, they are almost always, I haven't seen one that's been a liberal or excuse me,
Right.
or a Democrat. They've all been conservatives and Republicans, and a lot of them have been Christian clergy.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Allergies, man.
Yeah.
So the thing that I'm getting at is that witchcraft. Okay, so witchcraft in the light, positive witchcraft, good witchcraft. And again, let me take away the light from it for a second, because we always associate light and darkness with good and evil, and we've talked about this. We talked about shadow work, and we talked about the left hand path, and so darkness in and of itself is not inherently evil either. So, but whenever you talk about somebody who is practicing incantation, who is practicing naturalism for good, they don't accuse anyone. They just simply go about their work. But I will say, and I don't want to call it dark. I don't. What can you actually call it when people resort to accusations? And when you're resorting to accusations, basically an accusation at its root is a form of name calling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you're name calling, they call that, in terms of logical fallacy, an ad hominem. In other words, you've lost the intellectual high ground, so now you have to resort to a personal attack, right? And so that's what I see with the kind of witchcraft that Christian or that conservative Christians practice. Because if we're going to talk about so I pulled this up, and I'm going to throw this out here, what a witch is according to dictionary.com. And I'm going to throw this up on the screen just so that we can all see it. A little cut and paste here, and bing, bang, boom. So a person thought to have magic powers, especially evil ones, popularly depicted as a woman wearing a black cloak and a pointed hat and flying on a broomstick. Now, again, the pointy hat, the cloak, and the broomstick are all accusations, right? In other words, this is how conservatives want them to be portrayed. Now I'm going to go back to Bewitched for a second, y'all, and y'all bear with me. I promise you, I'm going somewhere, even though if it seems like I'm kind of going around my elbow to get there. And it's this: for all the shit that Endora used to do to torment Darren in Bewitched, and all the things that Uncle Arthur, Paul Lynde, the late great Paul Lynde, used to do to torment Darren, you could see that these people had great power. Mm-hmm. They had great power. And you would think that if they have this kind of power, that they could influence political outcomes, influence economic outcomes. They could really do some shit. But they didn't. You know, they were just really concentrating on fucking with people who were fucking with them, not anybody in a global sense. Whereas, you know, you'll get conservatives that I remember when Obama was president, that there were people citing this passage of Psalms saying, "Let his reign be short and let his days be cut short." In other words, they were cursing Obama to die.
Yeah,
these are Christians. So let me say this. I got to say this about blessings and curses, because this kind of factors into this, right? I believe that anybody can bless anybody, and I think that blessings are kind of universal. That a person that has no clue as to what power they might have, they can speak a blessing, and that the blessing will work.
Yeah.
You know, that if someone hears that and they say, you know something, I'm down with that. I can get down with that. I believe that. And the blessing will work. But curses are different. Because you can't be cursed if you don't believe in the curse. You know, it's like people will sit up and say, I pronounced a generational curse. You know, there was a woman that literally pronounced a generational curse on me. I told her to go fuck herself, because you don't have that kind of power over my life. I don't believe in that. Now, I do believe in the power of blessings. I do believe in the power of positive affirmations. I do believe in that. Or let me say, I don't believe in it, but I have confidence in its ability to perform, because I've seen it. I've seen people. I've seen, man. I'll never forget this. One time, I was in a taxi cab and leaving New York City, and the taxi driver drops me off at LaGuardia. But we had a really great conversation in the cab, and so when I get out, she says, "You know, I pronounce a blessing of favor on your life." Okay. So she pronounces this blessing, and I go to the ticket counter and I get upgraded to first class. Now, it's a small thing.
Right.
But,
sure.
But I do believe that we all have the power and the ability, and I will say this too, that we have the responsibility to speak well over each other. But I think that someone who speaks a curse over you, that curse only has power if you acknowledge its power. You know, people talk. So we're talking about voodoo. And one of the talisman of voodoo is the ubiquitous voodoo doll.
Yeah.
That if you have a voodoo doll or someone and you stick a pin into it, they experience some pain or some heartache or heartbreak or whatever. I don't think that works unless you believe it. If you believe that stuff can hurt you, and someone, they can't do it behind the scenes. They have to do it in front of you because you have to hear it and process it in order for it to have any effect in your life. And so to that end, I think that negative, let's call it negative witchcraft, because I don't want to call it dark anything or black magic or anything, because
Malevolent, painful.
yeah,
There's other terms we can use.
yeah, painful or negative or disruptive. I don't know what you want to call it, but I would say this, that when someone is trying to do something negative to you, that you have to be in earshot of them for it to be effective. Otherwise it just won't work. Somebody's just releasing words into the atmosphere, and and dare I say that perhaps if you release these words thinking that you're going to harm someone else, that because you're in earshot of those words, that maybe they'll harm you. The old boomerang effect. I don't. I'm kind of going on here, but the point that I'm getting at is that witchcraft. I think that there are tons of people out here, and I've actually come to a conclusion, Aaron. I'm gonna put this out here, and I'm gonna I'm gonna piss off a whole bunch of Christian folks, right? But I actually believe that I'm a witch. I don't really know how. I think that I have the ability. I think that I have some of the knowledge, but I think just like anything else, you have to be trained.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, so I'm not saying that just to kind of stir the pot. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this is something that I actually believe that some people have the power to tap into something spiritual, something conscious, something natural,
Mhm.
and I think I have it. I think
Mhm.
I have it. I've seen enough of it in my life. You've seen enough of it in your life, where you could
Right.
probably, and that's a bold. I'm not asking you to make the same claim as me. That's not what I'm. But it's like, if you have it, you have it. Anyway, I'm
Yeah,
going to stop.
I'm wondering to myself, what would happen if a group came out, Witches for Trump? Like, what would that do? What would that do to the Lance Wallnells of the world? How would they react to that? How would they respond to that? We're a group of witches.
Finally, Christians and the forces of darkness come together to serve, to help each other and to serve the purpose of God.
Yeah, or the devil. Yeah, the devil can't help himself but serve God's purpose. I'm just wondering what kind of a crazy spin they would put on that stuff. I don't know, man. Again, I one of the things I've been doing on Sunday mornings off and on for the last couple months is just talking to different people and from different backgrounds and different experiences, sharing my own thoughts and views on what does the future of spirituality look like in America, or for humanity, especially as we move more into the age of Aquarius. And I really do genuinely think it's going to be more of that individual path and individual initiation. I think we're probably moving further and further away from real binding group traditions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so witchcraft definitely lends itself to that kind of individualized sort of initiatory path and that kind of thing. Where people, again, if we define it as people tapping into that ability, that latent ability, or maybe it's not so latent, that natural talent or ability that we have to do that. Some people have more talent at that than other people, just like some people have more musical talent or more athletic ability. But I do think the way I look at this as the dying gasp of the age of Pisces. and people trying to cling to and conserve the world that was, fearful of the world that is to come, fearful of the powers of the age to come, if you will. But I think it's a dying gasp. I really do. I think, in 50 years, I think it'll be very, very different world, obviously, that we're living in, but not just because of AI and technology and all of that stuff, but because I think the consciousness of humanity is changing.
Yeah.
And I think that we're seeing people cling to the old, ferociously, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to keep it on life support, keep it going. I really do think that's what we're seeing. I have predicted that I thought Kamala's going to win the election. That's been my prediction. That's still my prediction. So, hail Satan, I guess.
you're going to get in trouble. You're going to burn, Aaron. You're going to burn. So let's talk about this for a second. Okay, good and evil. We all have these thoughts about what good and evil actually are. And people say witchcraft in and of itself is evil. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that anything can be used for good or not good purposes. And I want to refrain from the term evil, except with Republicans because they're evil. No, just kidding. I want to refrain from the term evil because of the connotations that go along with it. I can't say light and dark. We said positive, negative. We use that as a new paradigm, I guess. But how do we discern between that which is positive and that which is negative? And I think that should be pretty obvious, that if it's done to help, if it's done to exhort, if it's done to edify, if it's done to educate, then it must be good. But if it's done to tear down, to vilify, to insult or antagonize, then maybe it's not good. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, where my mind's going as I'm thinking about this. So for most religious people live inside of a dualistic frame of good and evil, and associate light with good and darkness with evil. That's just the framework in which most of them live. And so if we're talking about witchcraft as a means of tapping into sources of power, spiritual sources of power, however you want to define spiritual, but certainly from a Christian perspective, they're all tapped into light. They're all tapped into Jesus. They're all tapped into the angels. Like over here in heaven, it's just all good and all,
all light.
Yeah. And to the exclusion, there's nothing harmful. There's nothing evil. There's nothing baneful. There's nothing terrible about it at all. It's all pure and holy and good. And so we're tapping into those sources. And as long as we believe that we're tapping into the source of light, then anything that we do is justifiable. It all becomes sacrosanct. It all becomes sanitized. It all becomes, and that's what Lance Wallnau did, right? Like, when Trump first came on the scene, he definitely was not the family values guy, never has been really, or a model of Christian integrity. He gets asked what is his favorite Bible verse. He doesn't say. He probably never been to church or prayed a day in his life. Yeah. But because we believe we've tapped into this from a dualistic frame, all good, then anything that we say or do becomes sanctified because the source is good, right?
Yep.
So by the same token, I know there are Christians, if they're watching this, they're like, there is no such thing as white magic or white witchcraft. It's all because they believe that anything that's quote unquote witchcraft or anything that doesn't look like modern day Pentecostalism or evangelicalism is then tapping into this other side of the dualistic frame where it's all evil, it's all malevolent, it's all darkness, it's all deception.
Mm.
So anything good that's coming out of that, because I'm tapping into a evil source, then anything good that comes out of it is evil. And this has been a problem that Christians have. So you could look at anybody from any other tradition, whether it's witchcraft, whether it's a Eastern religion, whether it's shamanism, whatever it might be, a New Age healer, Reiki practices, whatever it might be, if it promotes something beneficial to someone, then we're told, no, we can't view that as beneficial because it comes from this rotten tree, right? It comes from this horrible source of dualism. And what's so fascinating to me is that this dualism was really a later invention in the Bible. I mean, Yahweh was not dualistic. Yahweh was very much good and evil. I create good and evil, right? I create light and darkness, and so I think that's the problem. So that when then we lose the ability, we're evaluating, kind of making doing a logical fallacy, if you can hang with me on this, in the sense that we're appealing to authority. Well, I tapped into a good power, so no matter what happens, it's got to be good because it comes from this good source and this good authority. You've tapped into this evil, horrible source and power, and so anything that comes out good actually isn't good because it's coming from a rotten tree. Do you see what I'm saying? So then what we do is we completely disconnect from any kind of pragmatism or any kind of reality or reality testing, in the sense of, was this beneficial and effective, or was this harmful and destructive? Because we're trapped in this dualistic frame, which is totally just a map. It's totally just a perception. It's not really the territory.
Right.
And I think that's the problem. So in the end, we can end up calling good evil and evil good, because we believe even though there was evil here, but it was ordained of God, so therefore ultimately it can't be evil. And even though good came out of this, Satan can't cast out Satan, otherwise his kingdom's divided. I can't be casting out spirits by the power of Beelzebub. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. And so I think it encourages this disconnect from rational thinking and reality that really causes people to suspend critical thinking. And when you suspend critical thinking, then you are open to any kind of suggestion that people say becoming and working for you like a hypnotic suggestion, like you're in a state of hypnosis. And I've seen people, I've studied hypnosis, I've practiced hypnosis. You know, there's a certain percent of the population that, you know, I've seen people eat an onion and absolutely believe they were eating an apple because they were told they were eating an apple.
Yeah.
And that's just the power of suggestion. And when you suspend critical thinking, which is the whole point of a hypnotic trance, is to get people into a state where they have suspended all critical thinking, so suggestions can just come in unchallenged. When you practice that as a lifestyle, then you're just open to any kind of anything. And I think that's how you end up where we're at in 2024 with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think they're in it's sort of a mass psychosis. It's sort of a mass hypnotic trance because people willfully surrendered their critical thinking. And part of the reason they willfully surrender their critical thinking is because they're living under this dualistic frame that doesn't really accurately represent the reality of what I believe is out there in the spiritual world. So there, I'm done with my monologue.
Well, you know, it's funny, like, you know, you always talk about the map is not the territory. And I was listening to a podcast and it was talking about the discovery of the Northwest Passage, right? And how you had all of these amateur cartographers, because cartography was not a real science back then. So they said, like, you get a map from somebody, like, let's say you get the secret map from Portugal, right? And at its best, it's ill prepared, it's
Mhm.
ill rendered, and at worst, it's a complete fabrication.
Mhm.
And so what happened was is that and this is a true story, that um, the Portuguese were considered to be the forerunners of map making.
Mhm.
And so the English, the Dutch, the Spanish, they bought these maps from the Portuguese, and they would go send ships into places, and these ships would like run aground.
Mhm.
Or like in the case of the Northwest Passage, they get up like into the Hudson Bay and get consumed by ice.
Mm.
Ice flows would just come in and compress and collapse the ship.
Mhm.
And so, we have to be careful who we're buying our maps from.
Yeah, it's a good analogy for
Yeah,
sure.
because every map isn't a good map, and it's funny like how I think about this, like Kyle Butler and I were having this conversation. This is a couple of months ago, and we were talking about how nobody reads a road atlas anymore. Nobody keeps a road atlas or a road map in their car. Why? Because everybody has GPS, right?
Mhm.
And so GPS has a network of satellites circling the Earth, and they're constantly updating the maps.
Mhm.
Highway changes, new highways built, on ramp changes, or let's say you get erosion from climate change on a coastline. You get all of this in real time.
Mhm.
And so now we have, I like to think of GPS as like a global consciousness.
Mm.
So we have this global consciousness that we're able to tap into
Right.
and see the terrain for what it really is. In other words, the map is still not the terrain, but the map more accurately represents the terrain than it ever has.
Yep.
But there are some people, like if you're reading a map from say 50 years ago and you try to navigate the highways of the United States or the highways of Western Europe based
Right.
on that 50-year-old map, you're going to have detours. You may even have some collisions because that map is outdated. So when we talk about like witchcraft, and I'm going to get to some, I'm going to change gears here in just a second. But when we talk about witchcraft, it does is the map that we had from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, is this map still relevant? In other words, maybe okay, so let's look at this, like take it in terms of science, right? When Michael Faraday began to and John Clerk Maxwell, they began to develop theories around electromagnetism, right? Electricity, static electricity was the only electricity that we knew because we didn't have dynamos and things like that or generators. So anything electric was considered to be witchcraft.
Mhm. Right.
So now we see, okay, there's natural healing, there's collective consciousness, there's understanding the power of energy, there's understanding the power of nature, and all these things. So now the territory is being revealed, so the map has to be updated. So that's one thing. So this is where I want to change gears. I want to kick something back over to you, right? Because when we talk about witchcraft and magic
Mhm.
are almost always conflated.
Mhm.
What is the difference between witchcraft and magic? And is either one of them better than the other, or do they represent a nuance of the same power? Or I mean, inquiring minds want to know.
Well, I think again, it depends on how you define witchcraft, right? Like the term that you posted. Let's see, a person thought to have magic powers, especially evil ones, popularly depicted as a woman wearing a black cloak and pointed hat. and flying on a broomstick. I mean, if that's people's definition of witchcraft, then, there you go. So if we define witchcraft as someone who, does incantations, or again, I would say taps into a force, taps into a power, taps into an ability to bring change. I would define them the same, actually. I would say magic is the ability to, by will, bring change into a situation, whatever. So whether it's, I go into a job interview and let's say everybody's mind's made up. They already know who they want to hire. And I go into a job interview, I'm not the guy, and I come out of there being the guy. Then whatever persuasive words or charm or whatever I used in that situation was magic, because that's what I wanted to have happen in that situation. The same token, when back in the church, when we would lay hands on the sick and the sick would recover, that was magic. You could also call that witchcraft, I think. So I wouldn't distinguish between the two unless we're using witchcraft as a pejorative, which I think it has been used as for most of our history in the West. But again, I think we've discussed that, that's just kind of the Christian way of undermining anything that we don't understand as Christians, or we don't like as Christians, or isn't with our program. We want to demonize it. So for me, I would say that the terms are fairly synonymous. But other people may define witchcraft totally different. People who practice Wicca tend to, in my opinion, conflate witchcraft with Wicca, because I don't think they're the same thing. But who am I to tell a Wiccan how they define and practice their religion? So if they want to say that Wicca is a religion of witchcraft, and then they would define it as what the wise ones, I've heard it defined that way too, that the word witch or warlock meant, the wise ones, the ones that tapped into the wisdom of the universe to bring about positive and good change, then that's their definition of witchcraft. So I think it just depends on, I'm not comfortable that there's a consensus around the term enough to delineate between the two for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so when I think about like magic, okay, so let's bifurcate magic for a second, because there's real magic, where you're able to, let's say, alter the course of matter or alter the course of energy, right? That's magic, right? But then you have like prestidigitation, what we commonly refer to, the David Copperfield, the Chris Angel type stuff. Right. And I think that, when people see that, they say, oh, well, that's clearly of the devil. Right. and it's really just, bending what you see, it's not a real alteration of matter or energy. It's just, prestidigitation. It's just a sleight of hand.
Right.
I want to share something. I'm going to try to do this real quick. If you bear with me here, I'm going to try to use the magic of magic. Of the Restream platform that we use. But bear with me just a second. Okay, there we go. So if I come back here to Restream and I want to add something, a presentation. So it's uploading now. It should only take a second because it's one picture. Because I want to share something with our Christian audience. and I want people to look at this and you know, with an open mind, because this is one of these things that when I saw it, this had a really profound impact on me. And it's this. Can you see that?
Yeah. Not sure
This
what I'm looking at, but
this is a picture of Jesus.
okay.
And what is that in his hand?
A wand, I would suppose.
A magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
That early church fathers and early church theologians saw Jesus's power as something magical.
Mm-hmm.
And so they represented it as a magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's the case, because you know I have my own thoughts about Jesus and who Jesus was and all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
I want the Christians who are watching this to really give this some consideration, because let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, that the person who you consider to be the savior of the world was a man that was able to tap into nature,
Mm-hmm.
or that he understood the power of collective consciousness and was able to manipulate matter and energy based on something that he had learned. And there's some schools of thought on this, that the span of time between Jesus's childhood and his earthly ministry, there are schools of thought that say that he spent time in India or Tibet or somewhere in the Far East learning mysticism
Right.
and magic. So I'm just putting it out there, because not everything is as it appears. And
Mm-hmm.
and that one picture that I showed you guys, that's a picture, but I challenge you to go out and look up, just do a search on Google, say Jesus and magic wand.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see a whole bunch of images, old images that predate even the what we call the Catholic Church, which is considered to be the mother church.
Mm-hmm.
What am I getting at? Is that what we consider to be witchcraft, and we're taught through religion, through Christianity, through theology, that witchcraft in and of itself is evil, and it's not. It's not. Basically, anything can be used or abused for good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
But something you said, that this could be the last gasp of the age of Pisces. It makes sense, that because if we're talking about the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius being this water bearer, this water bringer, that this water will fertilize, that this water will cleanse, that this water will do a lot of things, and let's just suppose that maybe this water is bringing a refreshing to the collective consciousness of humanity, and that it's bringing about a change. And for those of you who are thinking that, you know, that you're caught up in this bullshit of, well, this, you know, Kamala's debate performance is predicated on witchcraft. That's the only way it can happen. I want you to think about this for a second, because if your God is who you says your God is, then surely this God is not going to be tripped up by some chick who's performing incantations. That's just not going to happen, guys. And then the other thing is when you make the accusation of something, is that because that's something that you wish would happen, that you would like to see happen? Is your accusation a confession of where your heart really lies? These are the things that I want you to take away from this and consider. Because again, you know, I'm going to bring something else up here. Tarot deck,
Yeah.
you know, um, Palo Santo, candles, you know, crystals.
Yeah.
You know, is any of this stuff evil? No, it's not. None of it is inherently evil, and I think that there are people who are doing a work of good for humanity by tapping into the power of collective consciousness, the power of the universe, and using these things as channels through which to manifest this power. And if we are able to take off the religious blinders, take away this which blinds us, that constricts us, and allow these things to operate in the light instead of in the shadows, what kind of things can be produced in humanity from this? And again, let's go back for you Christian folks. Let's just say that your Jesus was a practitioner of magic. And let's say that the reason that he was able to do the things that he did, and the reason why he said the greater works than these shall you do, is because he operated without the blinders and he wanted you to also. And that is my ending shot.
It's pretty good. I can't top that. I think that's a great place to land the plane, to be honest. And again, I guess I would build on that by saying, what are we afraid of? Like, if
Exactly.
you're out there and you're afraid of this stuff, like when you hold that stuff up, like what is there to be so terrified of? What is there to be so afraid of? When it comes to this stuff, I'd really like to know, anybody out there that's watching, or if you're watching later, put it in the comments. Like, what are the fears that are out there?
Yeah. And that Aaron, you bring that's a great place to really end it. I mean, what are you afraid of? That is the greater question, because imagine if the power to end poverty, the power to end hunger, the power to end sickness, let's say even the power to extend life,
Mm-hmm.
that it exists in our ability to see consciousness in a broader context, to see nature in a broader context, and for us to collectively embrace and manipulate this together for the. I mean, imagine if we could live without limits. And I'm going to take this one last step further, because we had another historical event that happened this week. First civilian spacewalk.
Mm.
First civilian spacewalk. Civilians went up in a SpaceX capsule, and they didn't actually walk in space, but they opened the airlock and they peered outside the capsule. Still pretty fucking cool. I don't care what you think about Elon Musk, which I don't think much of him, but that was pretty fucking cool. Imagine if through the unleashing of our consciousness that we're able to travel to distant worlds without spaceships. I mean, because if we think about this, like our nearest neighbor, Proxima Centauri, they say that it would take like almost 1,000 years to get to Proxima Centauri if we could travel close to the speed of light. Imagine if unleashing our consciousness allows us to explore the universe in its entirety without spaceships. I mean, forgive me for dreaming, but let's give that some consideration. That maybe if we take the blinders off, that we scrub down the calluses that religion has given our minds, maybe we
Mm.
could do some really extraordinary shit.
Yeah, I think so. I really do. I believe that. I mean, I believe consciousness is primary. So primary to reality, that it is the essential component of reality. So
Yep. On
then
that, you and I agree.
the key to hacking all of reality then would be in our consciousness. And yeah, I mean, there's a guy, I wish I could remember his name. He's an African wisdom keeper. I want to say he's like from Ghana, I think from West Africa, one of those nations. Can't remember his name. Years ago, I watched an interview with him. But he talked about that, as far as traversing the universe, and talked about, the sky people, the people that come down from the sky. Mm-hmm. But the idea was, it was consciousness travel more so than space travel.
Yep.
And that was the ancient belief, that was passed down in his to his people, that he became the wisdom keeper and holder of. Fascinating interviews, like a 3-hour interview.
If you find that, please send it to me. I would love to watch that.
I will have to see if I can find it. I can't remember the guy's name. Some of the conspiracy theorists in America, like David Icke, and some of them kind of grabbed hold of some of his stuff, and I think polluted it, like as we do.
Yeah.
As we do. But still, really is fascinating. So I do believe that. I do believe that, that is the key.
Yep.
That unlocks many doors. So, and I do think religion is there to keep us locked into a certain state of consciousness.
Yeah. I think that is there to dull our consciousness.
Yeah. To callous it, like you said.
Yep. And if we could scrub the callus off, we need a pumice stone for our consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
Scrub off the callus. So I've been posting some comments, during the show. It's like, my bride Maya, she had some comments. Nathan Lee had some comments, and Joe Mashuda, he had some comments. I mean, it's some good stuff out there. And for those of you who are watching, if you watch this far, go through the comments and read them. It's some good stuff out there. And then also, if you have comments, please put them out there. And then if you have anything that you want, this is something I think we need to do, Aaron. We need to have like a mailbag, right?
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So when people have questions, we say, okay, here's the Q&A segment. We got this comment from so and so, and we read it back on the show and answer it. I think that would be really cool. But this was a really good show, and it kind of went in some different directions than I thought it would. But anyway, for everybody that's watching, witchcraft isn't bad. And Joe Mashuda just said, or if there is a demon, it's the demon of religion. You got that right. When Jesus said, you are of your father, the devil, he wasn't talking about Satan, because those first century Jews would have had no understanding of who Satan was, but they understood religion. They understood that completely. And that was it. You are of your father, religion. Religion is the devil. Religion is the accuser. Religion is what holds us back. And as soon as we can get past religion and start thinking in terms of pure consciousness, then man, we'll do things that put the Tower of Babel to shame.
Yeah.
So that's what I have, man.
All right, everybody. Thanks for chiming in with the comments. It was great tonight. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoy doing these.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
All right. Love y'all. Love you, Aaron.
Love you too, man.
All right.
Peace out.